Hey there YouTube, Gabe from Nexus Core here with another One Piece card game video. We are going to be continuing on with my review of all of the cards that have been revealed from OP02 Paramount War, since we have recently, as of yesterday at the time of recording, gotten all of the cards revealed. Since we've gone over red and green, next is blue. So I am going to skip over Sanji because we went over him in the green video, so we're just going to go right into it with Emporio Ivankov as our mono blue new leader. Eva's effect is, at the end of your turn, if you have 0 cards in your hand, you can draw 2 cards. So this seems to be the primary theme of the Impel Down blue build, where you discard a lot of cards and draw a lot of cards. So you discard to get a consistency to really see the cards you want to see. Personally, I don't love the play style as far as the strength of the deck goes. That really remains to be seen. Again, as I've said, a lot of the cards were revealed recently, and I'm reading a lot of these for the first time now. I just really don't like this kind of play style, but, I mean, hey, I really want Eva to be good because the Rocky Horror Picture Show was basically what I grew up with, so shout out to Ivankov, the best character in One Piece. So, continuing with the Impel Down theme, we have Inazuma, who is a 4/5 with counter 1000. Types are Impel Down and Revolutionary Army. His effect is if you have 1 or less cards in your hand, this character gets 2000 power, and it is also a blocker. So, this is a solid card. The thing that I find interesting, though, is it is kind of a non-bow with Eva to an extent, because if you have 1 or less in your hand, it gets to 2000, but if you have 0, you draw 2 off of Eva at the end of your turn. So it makes for a solid 7k attacker, but you're going to have to counter first before you block if you want to use Eva's effect and also have Inazuma be the 7k. I think it's still definitely worth running for that stat line, and being able to hit for 7 is still quite good. It's just an interesting thing, too, that I think is worth noting for how these two interact with its designated leader. So next we have our first SR, which is Emporio Ivankov. It costs 7, power 7, types are Impel Down, Revolutionary Army. The effect is on play, draw cards so that you have 3 in your hand. Then you can play 1 blue Impel Down type character with a cost of 6 or less from your hand. So this is a great card, absolutely mandatory for this build. Being able to potentially go +3 if you are down to 0 when you play Eva. But even then, going +2 for free is still really good, and being able to cheat out a 6 cost is fantastic. There are quite a few 6 costs, so paying 7 to get a decently statted character and a 6 cost on board is very good, and drawing on top of that makes it just an excellent addition. So next we have Kabaji, who is a 2/3 counter 1000, type is the Buggy Pirates. On play, if you have Moji, draw 2, discard 1. Don't know if we're going to get a Buggy deck, and I don't know if we're going to get enough Kabaji and Moji cards to make this worth it, but draw 2, dump 1 is a generally good effect, so if these are in any way playable, this isn't a bad card, but it's going to need a lot of help for a pure Buggy deck. So next we have Crocodile, who is a vanilla, so 5/7/1, type is Impel Down and former Baroque works. It's a vanilla, not really much to say. It's cheatable out with Ivankov, which is pretty cool, so you get 2 7,000s for the price of 1, so I think that's pretty decent. Next, we have another vanilla, who is Gecko Moria, 4 cost, 6,000 power, counter 1,000, 7 Warlord of the Sea type. I think this is notable because this does work with the Doflamingo leader from set 1, so it's another card you can cheat out, and I think being a 6k base is pretty good on its own, that it might be worth it for that, on that merit by itself. So I think this might see some play in a dedicated Dofi deck just because it has that good stat line. Next, we have Dracule Mihawk, who is a cost 6, power 8, counter 1, 7 Warlord of the Sea. It's a vanilla. I'm not sure if it'll see play, honestly, just because blue isn't really about these big numbers. You kind of do a lot of more tricksy technical stuff. So being a Warlord of the Sea, but not being hittable off of Doflamingo's effect, but for 1 more cost, you can use Doflamingo, the 7 cost, to bounce something. Not sure, but having another card that can hit good numbers in blue might really help just help close out games, so I could be completely off base. Next, speaking of Doflamingo, we have an uncommon who's a cost 1, power 2, no counter. Type is Ward of the Sea, so it is cheatable by the Doflamingo leader, and he's also a Donquixote pirate type. On play, check the top 3 and put them at the top or the bottom of your deck in any order, so it is basically the starter deck Kuma. But it also has Dawn 1 on attack. You may trash a card from your hand, then place one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 1 or less to the bottom of their deck. I'm very mixed on this. I think the main problem is that there are obviously quite a few cost 1s that are worth putting to the bottom of the deck. The problem is the Dawn 1 means he's only going to have 3,000, so there's going to be very few attack targets, so you're going to be using the Dawn in some cases just to send something to the bottom, which is by no means bad. It's just you're going to need to put quite a few Dawn for him to be able to hit anything while also tucking. So I think it's a thing worth considering. But having that effect while also having the ability to sculpt the top of your deck means it might honestly see play over Perona, as it's another warlord that you can cheat out if you really need to go in blind. Even though Perona lets you check the top 5, this is just another card that Dofi can hit. So I think this is pretty interesting. Next, we have another copy of Kuma. I freaking hate this art. This looks so weird to me. I'm sorry to whoever drew this, but wow, this looks odd. He looks like a balloon. Anyways, Bartholomew Kuma, who's a cost 3, power 3, counter 1. Type is 7, Warlord of the Sea and Revolutionary Army, so again with Doflamingo. Effect is on play. Look at the top 2, reveal a Warlord, add it to your hand, and top or bottom the rest. I think this is quite interesting, especially because there are a lot of Warlord cards in that build that you can check the top a lot of your deck. So if you say play Perona, you can check the top 5, put the Mihawk with 2 counter on top, anything that you don't like underneath, and then something of 4 or less underneath that. Play Kuma, check that too, because you know it's on top. You can add that Mihawk or any good card, bottom of deck something else, and then still cheat out with Doflamingo. And honestly, the fact that you can keep the second card on the top means you could add with Kuma and then use Doflamingo. So I think this is actually quite solid. And yeah, I think this is a pretty good card for the Doflamingo deck. So next we have Buggy, who is cost 1, power 2, counter 1, type is Impel Down and Buggy Pirates. On play, check top 5, reveal a blue Impel Down other than itself, add it to your hand and bottom of deck the rest. So this is the dedicated Nami for the Impel Down build, which means it's a 4 of no questions asked. A very, very good card. You're obviously going to want to run this. Next, we have Boa Hancock, cost 4, power 5, counter 1. Color is blue, obviously. Type, Impel Down. 7 Warlords of the Sea and Kuja Pirates. Her effect is on attack, draw 1, trash 1. Then you can trash up to 3 more. I think this is fine. You get to cycle a card, which is good for consistency. And the fact that you can bring your hand down to 0 if you really want to is there. The fact that you don't get any other benefits from trashing 3, I think kind of sucks. At the very least, I would have liked it if she got some power out of it, because you theoretically do go -3 by doing this, so it should have had some other benefit, like for every card you trash on top of the draw 1, trash 1, get 1k. But it works with the Impel Down deck for that reason. So if you have a bunch of cards you hate, you can use that on attack effect and then play trash everything besides the 7 cost Eva, play the 7 cost Eva, and then draw 3, hopefully getting something better. So it's definitely worth running in the Impel Down deck for that. So it's a solid card. Then for Kabuji, we do have Moji, who is a vanilla, cost 1, power 3, counter 1. Not really much to say. We have Morley, who I'm actually kind of surprised to see here. But, I mean, Morley is the reason that Newkama lands existed, if you didn't know, which I think is at least a good flavor bonus for the Impel Down. Cost 4, power 5, counter 1. type Giant Revolutionary Army, so we might be seeing a Revolutionary Army deck at some point because of how many ones we've gotten with the Impel Down cards. But Morley's effect is on attack. If you have 1 or less in hand, your opponent cannot block with a cost of 5 or less. So if you have 1 or less in hand, Morley becomes kind of like the Shanks card, or it gives itself Diable Jambe, which I think is solid. I think it kind of sucks that it doesn't have the Impel Down type, because of course, for the anime reasons, it doesn't have it, but at the same time, being a part, it's so clearly designed for the Impel Down deck that I think this would have been completely fine to be searchable off of Buggy, but I think this is still a solid card. So next we have our next SR being Monkey.D.Luffy, who's cost 6, so this is cheatable out by Eva, and power 7, type is Impel Down and Straw Hat Crew. And the effect is on play and on attack, so great things to trigger it. You can trash 2 from your hand, return up to 1 character with a cost of 4 or less to the owner's hand, then this character gets double attack. I think this is solid. The fact that you have to trash the 2 to get the effect is a bit of a heavy cost, but so many of these cards are all about circumventing that, so I do think it's fine. And the fact that you can bounce something of 4 or less, so you have a diet version of Sables on top of giving itself double attack, I think is quite solid. And anything with an on play and on attack trigger is always going to be good. So this is definitely a fantastic card for the Impel Down build. Next we have Mr. 1, Daz.Bonez. Cost 1, power 1, counter 1, type Impel Down, and former Baroque works. Effect is on play at a blue event with a cost of 1 from your trash to your hand. I think this is solid. There are quite a few blue events that are cost 1 that are worth running, and getting it for free is solid. It's Impel Down, which you're probably going to like, so being able to get an event that you think you're going to need, like Desert Spotted, because what it doesn't say is that it has to be, say, an Impel Down event. It's just any blue event with a cost of 1. So this is the type of card that's solid, and it will only get better as we get more and more blue 1-cost events as the game goes on. So next we have Mr. 2, Bon.Kurei or Bentham. So cost 5, power 5, counter 2. Always happy to see a counter 2000 on a card. Type is Impel Down, so it is searchable off of Buggy and former Baroque works. The effect is Dawn 1 on attack. Trash a card from your hand. Place up to 1 character with a cost of 2 or less at the bottom of the owner's deck. Then at the end of this battle, place this character at the bottom of the owner's deck. Honestly, it had to be until it had to go -1. The fact that the Impel Down deck is about discarding means the trash 1 was a perfectly fine cost for the effect, especially if you're only tucking a cost 2 or less. You didn't need to minus itself. Now you're minusing 2 to go -1. It's probably seeing play because it's an Impel Down with counter 2, but that -2 just hurt it so much. It fumbled the bag at the end. Come on now. Next is Mr. 3, Galdino. Cost 4, power 5, counter 1. Type Impel Down, former Baroque works as well. Effect is blocker, and at the end of your turn, you may trash 1 card from your hand to set this character as active. So it is like a diet version of the 7-cost Kid in green. You can attack with it and then block with it, which I do think is always solid, being able to attack with a blocker and then get it back. So this is still solid. And now we are on to the events. We have the Impel Down All-Stars. Main phase for cost 1, you can trash 2 from your hand. If your leader is an Impel Down, draw 2, and its trigger is draw 2. I think this is fine. It is unfortunately a net -1, because you play this, lose 1, and trash 2 to draw 2, so you go -3 to draw 2, but it's another consistency booster. It gets you to things like the 7-cost Eva, faster, it turns on your leader's ability by virtue of that. It's a great trigger effect for the +2. So this is probably going to see play for that, especially because it's cost 1, so you can get it with Daz.Bonez, which is pretty neat. Next, we have Arabesque Brick Fist, cost 2, type Fishman and Impel Down. Main phase, return up to 1 character with a cost of 4 or less to its owner's hand, and trigger, activate its main effect. So we're continuing the trend that we've been seeing with the last 2 colors, which is diet down-costed versions of previous cards. This is like the Desert Spada or Sables, I believe, from the Blue Start deck, where instead of costing 4 to bounce 7 or less, you have the cost to bounce 4 or less. So I think it's solid for that, and yeah, if you're, we have a very low to the cost ground meta. Being only needing to pay 2 to bounce something is quite solid. So I think this is still a decent consideration, and it's Impel Down, so it is searchable off of Buggy. Next, we have Gum Gum Rain, which is a cost 0. I believe this is the only cost 0 card in the game thus far. Its type is Impel Down and Straw Hat Crew. Counter, trash a card from your hand to give your leader or character plus 3,000 power, and its trigger is return up to 1 character with a cost of 2 or less to its owner's hand. I think this is fine for the Impel Down deck because you don't need to pay Dawn, so you do get to reserve that, and discarding a card does help you activate some of your cards, so I think it's fine for that. I think the fact that it costs 0, even though you have to go -2, but you still get the 3,000 in place of your normal cost 1 for 2,000, so I do think this is actually a pretty decent counter for Impel Down. Next, we have Death Wink, cost 3, type Impel Down, and Revolutionary Army. Counter, up to 1 of your leader or characters gains 6,000 power during this battle, then draw cards so that you have 2 in your hand. Trigger, return up to 1 character with a cost of 7 or less to the owner's hand. So, continuing the other trend, where we're seeing up-costed versions of cards, this is kind of like a Impel Down version of Love Beam, where you do have to have a X or less cards in your hand, but you get more power for the 3 cost, and you can potentially draw 2 if you have 0 in hand after playing this, instead of Love Beam, which you are only going to draw 1 no matter that situation. So I think this is solid, and it kind of depends on how often you're going to want to be paying 3 cost, because Impel Down seems to have quite a few cards of decently high cost, so the fact that it costs 3 might hurt a little bit. And next, continuing the other trend, we're finally getting more stages with Newkama Land, cost 1, Impel Down. You may rest this stage. If your leader is Emporio Ivankov, draw 1, trash 1, then trash up to 3. So it's a stage version of Boa Hancock, which I think is worth it. Honestly, I think this is pretty great because it is basically just cycle a card every turn, which is fantastic consistency. So yeah, I think that's actually pretty neat. And that's going to wrap it up. So, I'm not the best to talk about blue. I think I've said before, blue is the color I usually wind up the least interested in, and frankly, this only cemented that. I do not care about the massive discard for consistency playstyle that Eva is going for, so I'm not the best judge of its power. Let me know down below if you think there's some cool combos, or if you think it does have merit and might see a place in the meta, and that it's... I will be completely upfront in saying I just have a personal bias against this playstyle. I don't like the needing to go minus for these abilities. That's just not how I play cards. So I am not the person to be judging this at all. But I do think we're seeing a lot of interesting things here. I'm glad that Bandai is experimenting with all of these different playstyles. I like that. Like, this is something pretty new. It's very different from what we've seen. I do also think it's kind of interesting how Set 2 is shaping up, because more similar to I think Red, we got mostly a completely new build with some incidental support with previous blue builds. Like, we do have the 4-cost Moria for the Warlord deck, but it primarily is mostly new cards, save some of these incidental ones like Moria, Kuma, and Doflamingo. So I kind of think it's interesting how with green it was pretty much all Wano all the time, blue was Impel Down, red was the Edward Newgate build with some of the 1-cost cards. So this is kind of an in-between, where red was all new, divided amongst two different playstyles. Green was all all old for one playstyle. This is the vast majority for one new build and a little bit for another older build. So, yeah, I think I'm rambling on at this point, but at the very least, while I don't care for the playstyle, I'm glad Ivankov is getting love, and I'm glad Bandai is going this experimental route, so I think it's still pretty interesting. But let me know what you think about this deck down below in the comments, and I will see you in the next video when we start going over the purple build.